Welcome, guys, to the Improvement Season podcast. As you can see, it's a different setup this time with a unfamiliar face for some people and a familiar face for some other people. And it is Steve Hall I'm talking about.
Because they've seen the Avengers, so
yeah, totally.
They know who this is.
Exactly. So we got Thor here. We got me, Thanos. And also we got... I don't know. Who are you, Steve?
I'm going to be the Hulk. Come on.
The Hulk. Yeah. The gating is going well. And basically, you're very smart. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Hulk.
But anyway, this time around, we just to finish the introduction, we don't have Thor here. I mean, yes, we do have Thor, but at the same time, he is also known under a different name, and that is Harry Smith. So, hey, Harry, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, for those who are now a little bit wondering who that guy is, what he's doing here, he's the new coach at Revive Stronger, and we are very happy to have him on. Not just on the show, but also in general on the team. And this time we will basically just throw questions at him that are a little bit overwhelming, hopefully, and make him a little bit nervous. No, it's more like just to get to know another, not us three, but for the audience. And yeah, here we are now.
And I was going to say, we should have said something like, this is our new sponsored Instagram athlete, and they're just for the looks. So
I got a discount.
No brains here. What did you say, Harry?
Provide discount code.
Yeah, right.
Revive 10.
Yes, it's a little bit, I don't know, disappointing that we now have such a handsome fella on the team. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. It's good that I got a girlfriend now instead of the time when, or just imagine Harry would have gotten on the team before I'm having a girlfriend. I mean, what should I have done then? I mean, give up on life?
And everyone who's listening to this is going to be like, well, we got to see this guy, so you better tune into YouTube as well.
That's true. So, yeah, I mean, anyway, we are just once again, as always, rambling on. This episode is, as I already mentioned earlier, more about Harry. We want you to know more about Harry, who he is, what he's doing besides being and saving the world and the universe. But yeah, Harry, so first and foremost, why have you come on the team of Revive Stronger? Everyone wants to know that. Did Revive Stronger pick you, or was it the other way around?
I think it was a mutual picking. I know you guys kind of offered me the opportunity, but it was very much a case of like, when are they going to offer this opportunity? I've kind of been known you guys for a couple of years now. It's taking its time. Is it lost in the post? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. You've invested a lot of money to actually make that happen. You visited all the seminars just to be on our radar. So
I'm glad you
and it worked out. It worked out. So it was a subtle manipulation of yours that happened subtly over a couple of years now, and I'm in love. I'm in love. So it worked out just fine. You did a good job with that one.
I was going to say it should really come from us. Like, why did Harry join the team? And I want to say, first of all, before we get into Harry's background and everything, we don't take any old person on. You guys have been kind of introduced to Ryan and kind of him coming onto the team, Miguel. So Harry is like a very, very intelligent, very good coach. Like, that's probably the most important thing when you think about the characteristics of a coach, and being empathetic and actually having skills to be able to get people results. And he has shown that through what we've seen, like his social media output. And he continues to educate himself, and he puts in the work in the gym himself too. And it just became very apparent that this guy needs an opportunity, or we wanted to give an opportunity. And we were very glad that he took it upon himself to decide to join the team as well. So I think it's important for the listeners probably to get a bit of background behind you, Harry, kind of like initially, why did you get into the gym? Why then personal training? A bit of your kind of educational background, who you've looked up to, and then, where you are today.
Okay, thanks. I feel like my face is really flushed. I don't think I've ever had such a flurry of compliments in one go. So I can't handle them very well. I kind of just shut down and be like, shh, when people say nice things. But thank you. I appreciate it. But so what kind of got me started in lifting in the first place, I think was the same thing as everyone. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. I'd say when I was a teenager, it was the same thing that got everyone into lifting. You can probably guess what it was. Yeah, you have the perception that ladies will like you more if you're more muscular.
Okay. For me, it was just like, yeah, I was a chubby kid. So at some point, I mean, I think there are three things that drive people to lifting. Either being more attractive for the other sex or for the same sex even. Being chubby or have been fat and obese or something like that, wanting to get more in shape, or the other way around, always being skinny and just wanting to be a little bit heavier and more muscular, right?
Yeah. I kind of had a combination of three different factors. So the primary factor was from a young age, I'd always been obsessed with sort of superheroes and stuff like that. And I'm quite lucky in the sense that my dad was actually into bodybuilding. He never competed or anything, but my entire life he has always lifted weights and stuff like that. So my idea of like the masculine ideal from as long as I can remember was a muscular, strong guy. And then the obsession with superheroes came, like with the 90s Spider-Man and X-Men cartoons, and they were all jacked out of their minds. And I think that influenced it as well. And then, so I'd always kind of just picked up dumbbells and messed around with them. And then when I hit sort of 16, 17, I was like, maybe if I was jacked, people would forget that I have no game at all. And they might actually want to talk to me. And then it kind of just moved into, I wouldn't even know what it is now. It's almost like it's such a part of your life, just lifting. If someone took it away from you, you'd rather they took away family members than lifting. But at least that's
I mean, this is something that is very important, at least to me, that I'm always trying to bring across to many of my clients, that you want to make lifting and also everything that it involves that, so taking care of your nutrition, a part of you and your identity. This is how a strong habit actually is being built, right? That you want to identify with that person who does these kind of things. And you want to say like, okay, this is just part of me. This is what I'm doing and who I am, right? Even though when you get up early in the morning and you simply don't want to train, you still are going because it is who you are, right? And I think this is the same for all three of us, that we are doing it because it's now a part of us. It's not even a question about whether we are doing it or not, right? It's just a habit that now has become identity of us.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to make the point about it's just part of my identity now. Like, and it's that way with my friends and family as well. It's like if you mention me, they'd be like, "Oh, he just lifts all the time. I don't know what he does." Like, there's a joke in my family because that anytime I see any family members, they're always like, are you still teaching people how to do press ups? I'm like, yeah, that's what my job is. I just teach people how to do press ups.
The entire day.
Yeah. All day, every day. Just
press up cam.
Yeah.
With Harry Smith.
All I do is count reps. But, yeah. So then moving into kind of experience and qualifications, I did have a real job for a couple of years and realized
a real job.
Yeah, a real job where basically someone else was in control of paying me and what hours I worked and that kind of thing. And then the main factor that I realized why I hated that and wanted to move into the fitness industry was the fact that it was having a severely bad effect on my ability to train. And that was around the time when I'd really got into training and like I just wanted to do it all the time. And I felt like this one thing in my life, like the job, the thing I need, was making it really, really hard to kind of optimize my training in the way I wanted to. Like I've got millions of notebooks and stuff like that from my first few years training where, and I remember like loads of the notes of basically having to just consistently make compromises based on the fact that I was doing like 12-hour days in construction. I used to be an engineer and that kind of thing. And then it kind of, one guy at work actually, because I got to a situation, I was almost advising the other colleagues on how to train and that kind of thing. And then one guy literally just went, "Why are you here? Like, why don't you go and do that?" And then that was like when the penny dropped and I was like, why am I here? And then I looked into it and then I got myself qualified as a PT. And that was about 6 years ago now. And since then I've basically just been working as a PT in person with lots of different clients and also online a little bit too. And just focused on growing my knowledge as much as possible. I've always had this insatiable thirst for just feeling like I never know enough. And I just want to keep like just learning everything.
Yeah.
In that regard, what have you been doing then to actually, I don't know, satiate your thirst for education and knowledge?
I've got notifications set on T Nation's website, so anytime that they read an article, that was me in the early
Subscribe.
days. Yeah.
And buy the supplements.
Yeah. In the early days, my main sources of information are probably bodybuilding.com, T Nation, and like Strength Sensei. Did you ever read any of those articles?
No, but T Nation, I've started with that as well, and also just Lean Gains, the blog. Back in the days.
I didn't quite hit Lean Gains. I think he might have been bigger in Europe than he was in the UK.
Yeah,
but and I just remember like Charles Poliquin was the overlord at one point. Everything he said went, and then I kind of felt, I always felt that there was like a bit of a mismatch. Like the information never quite felt like it made complete sense whenever you read any of those, like, well, not any of them, some of them. A lot of those kind of articles, especially bodybuilding.com, it'd be like, you should just do this because this. And you'd be like, but how did you get from like X to Y? I don't understand that bit in the middle. And then that led me to keep pushing and keep kind of criticizing the stuff I was reading. And then I moved more into finally discovering 3DMJ through Matt Ogus. I think that's everyone's journey to 3DMJ. Just seeing like, this guy's jacked and he's not taking steroids. Like, is that a thing? And then from there moved on to like the muscle and strength pyramids. And then that introduced me to scientific literature. And then I really went hard on that. And then from there, I found out about the Shredded by Science Academy, which I know you are a member of. Is that the right term?
Yeah. A student, a past student, because I mean, they are not Shredded by Science anymore, but still you can access the past footage and stuff. So I was doing that as well. So yeah.
That's been really cool to see a lot of the kind of alumni from Shredded by Science and where they've kind of gone off to on the other side of it. And then from there, I kind of felt like, I've learned a lot. I feel like I'm a much better coach than I was, but I still don't feel like I still want to know more. And then from there, I moved on to the Mac Nutrition University, which is, if anyone who doesn't know, it's an evidence-based nutrition certification. So that is trying to be the most unbiased and almost real and scientific nutrition qualification that you can do. And I can honestly say it is really an awesome certification. There's a lot of things you read when like, especially if you've done the UK personal trainer qualification. I think you have, Steve.
Yeah.
Where, you know, there's no citations in the entire thing. And it's not like you don't need citations for it to be valid information. But if you do have a questioning kind of mindset, like I did, anytime I saw something that I felt like sounded a bit strange, I'd be like, well, how do we know this is the truth? And then the poor tutor was just like, it just is, okay? Like,
just accept it and don't ask questions.
And then, exactly, yeah. And that's kind of, but with MNU, it's the exact opposite. It's like there's more citations than you could ever need. And you can go down that rabbit hole and read them all if you want. But I truly felt like it's the most sort of unbiased or well-rounded certification that you could do if you have an interest in kind of pursuing nutrition. But from there, it's just been working with clients, mostly with Gen Pop clients. So Gen Pop's a funny term because if you say Gen Pop to a Gen Pop person, they don't know what it means. But yeah, so general population people, which is basically classed as 99% of the people you're ever going to meet in your life.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And basically Gen Pop in our realm, right? I think that many people think that terming someone or putting a stamp on them with Gen Pop is a bad thing, or is kind of, I don't know, a negative connotation to it, which is not, right? Someone is not kind of competing. They are kind of Gen Pop. They are maybe having an interest in a different field, but it's still general population because they are not professional athletes. They are not competitors. Thus, how else would you quote them, right?
That's pretty much the classification in my head. It's like, are you almost entirely obsessed with bodybuilding? If the answer is no, then you're Gen Pop. If the answer is yes, then you fit into the kind of small niche. Yeah. But I have to say, like, I love working with all different kinds of people, but the group that really does kind of get you fired up is the group that aligns most with yourself, which is definitely that, like I said, that kind of 1% of people that like a stranger on a train says bodybuilding and they're like yeah. But that's kind of the stuff that I really love doing. Yeah.
Just a while back, I think a month back or so, Katie and I was just like at a supermarket picking up some groceries. And there was this one guy parking on the parking spot, coming out of the car, and I could clearly see that he's lifting, right? And it was just like, oh yeah, you got it, man. You got it. I've never seen anyone like you here in that area ever before. Yeah. So there was just this confirmation going on, right? And so this is just so cool to see when it's just like, I'm approving, you do lift.
Yeah. You get the same thing when, because I train clients in what would be considered like a sort of commercial gym environment. And for the most part, I'd like to think I've got a positive influence on it, but for the most part, you don't see the best technique in commercial gyms and that kind of thing. And then it's very much like if you see someone who looks a little bit more muscular than the normal kind of gym member, and then they start moving really well, and you kind of catch each other across the gym, and you're a bit like,
yeah.
You both.
I know that one.
Yeah, you're into this game too.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, amazing. Yeah, Steve, do you want to? I know that you are the moderator most of the time, so you have all the good questions when it comes to hosting a podcast. I think that you have probably something to say here.
Well, you guys kind of did it a little bit in that I was really interested to hear from Harry in terms of like, obviously, a lot of people get in. It didn't sound like you knew personal training was going to be it for you. It didn't sound like you knew. It was just kind of like, it's better than what I'm currently doing and I'm really into it, so why not try it? And that often is where personal trainers fall on their face and then they quit after the first year. I forget the statistic, but it's something
I think it's
ridiculously
8
high.
out of 10 don't make 3 years, something like
Yeah.
that.
And obviously,
And I
you've
think
now
in the first 6 months, the retention rate of a personal trainer is most of the time only 6 months, and then they are gone, like for good. Because it's, I mean, I think many people romanticize that feel, that they think like, oh yeah, personal training, because it's my hobby, doing that as an occupation must be amazing as well, right? Lifting the entire day, just working with people that are like me. Most of the time, that's not really the reality. Most of the time it is. You're working offline. You need to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, train a couple of people, then do lots of logistical stuff in the daytime, and then at the end of the day, train people once again, have a 14 to 16 hour day each and every single day, and then, yeah, you're self-employed and it's hard, right? I mean...
Yeah, I was going to say, it just from the outside in, I think a listener could be like, oh, I love lifting. Harry became a personal trainer and now like he can lift and like do what he likes and it's all kind of sunshine and rainbows. So I wanted to hear why you think you stuck with it, whether or not you fell in love with this certain kind of results you got people and how that kind of the feeling that gave you. And like I said, I think people will realize like you're a good coach, and I think that's kind of a prerequisite for being able to survive. And then also like for yourself, kind of what's kept you lifting and kind of moving forward, and your ambitions going forward as well. Yeah.
So I think to start with, it's like the tenacity my parents have instilled in me growing up was very much like quitting something is failing something. So from the get-go, and because I had quit something to do it, I was like, this is something I have to make work, because there is nothing else I love as much as lifting. And if this doesn't work, then I'm destined for a real job for the rest of my life. So it's one of those things you hear it a lot in like personal development books and stuff like that, when there's like fear of staying the same has to outweigh kind of fear of moving forwards before you actually would be fully committed to something. And for me, that the idea of staying in that, like, it was a 7 to 7, it wasn't quite 9 to 5, but like 12-hour office job was like, that was the most terrifying thing ever. And I felt like that was the main motivator. And also, I got this from The Rock, actually, the hardest worker in the room. That whole attitude I really love. And I always felt like whenever I've been in gyms and was kind of a PT in the early days, I always had the goal of like, I even used to kind of repeat it in my head, like I have to be the hardest worker in this room. I have to be doing all the other things that the other PTs aren't willing to do. And I'd seen it quite a lot where, like what Pascal said, PTs just come and go like buses, literally. Like they think this is going to be the career for me. And then they do it for a few months and then they kind of just disappear. And I just kind of just analyzed everything that those other coaches did and was like, I'm not going to do the things that they did because they aren't here anymore. And they just kind of kept pushing forwards that way. And also, I'm a sucker for wanting to help people as well. So I think that's the main motivating factor, because if you want to do personal training for money, there's many other much more kind of financially viable careers than personal training. Especially
that's why I always, that's why I'm sorry for that. That's why I find it so funny when people, especially online, accuse us of like wanting to make a big buck when we are producing something like an ebook. Because let's be real here, we are trying to produce content for a niche. we could go out there and try to sell bullshit because we have the knowledge how to do so, right? So we are very well educated and we know like, okay, this is something that people fall into. Why not sell this when we want to make the money, right? And also when it comes to just personal training in it for itself, yesterday we had a consultation with someone and there was exactly like you said. We basically told him like, okay, don't focus on the money because the monetary aspect will come once you do a good job. It will follow inevitably. It could always turn out that it won't, right? But the likelihood is actually very, very low. If you're continuously putting yourself out there, doing a good job, people will know about that. And it will then, pay out for you.
I can't remember what the rest of your question was, Steve. Sorry.
I'll say it again. I actually wanted to say, in addition to kind of discovering Harry, it's just something I want to reinforce to the listeners because it's happened so much already, kind of with at least the growth of Revive Stronger. And for me, initially growing the brand and then bringing on Pascal, bringing on Ryan, now with Harry, and we've got Jess obviously and Miguel's there as well. And there's a lot of similarities between each person, not just they're smart, the skill set, all of those sort of things, but also just handsome, very good. But also like the element of networking and going to seminars, looking to further educate themselves, but not just doing that, also making sure to interact. Because I think, yes, it's great to go to seminars, it's great to show your face and be there, but you have to actually interact as well and show your face and show you're interested. Just for people who are listening who are like, how's Revive Stronger got to where it is now? How have these people joined the team? Like, how's Harry where he is now? And like a big part of it is just he's just shown he's enthusiastic and willing to put in the work and has consistently shown his face. And it pays off. Like, you don't know at the time that it's paying off necessarily, but it does. But yeah, the second part of my question was your future ambitions, Harry. And I think actually that might have been a question that came through our kind of requests, but I thought that would be interesting for the listeners at least now.
Yeah. I had, just following on from what I was saying and what you said about networking and stuff like that. I've always had a rule when I went to the networking events that I was going to be the last person to leave. So I think it
that annoying guy.
Yeah. I think it's worked. I don't know. You guys tell me. But regarding my future ambitions, that's really hard to say because especially being like we're always driving towards something. For me, it was wanting to. It kind of started as a crusade against bullshit in the fitness industry. I think that's where it came from initially. And then I realized that there's other people doing that much better than me. And I feel like I'm too nice to be a polarizing person as well. Like, I'm not able to kind of stand at the forefront and be like, they're full of shit and like that kind of thing. I'd be like, I can see some value in what they're saying. And I feel like I'd be quite boring to follow if you wanted real, like, aggressive marketing like that. But, I want to be part of something meaningful. And again, that sounds cliched and kind of a bit cringy, but I definitely feel like I sit on the wave of people that are fed up with the sort of 9-to-5 status quo, and that we are in a world where we can do the things that we want to do and earn money doing the things that we want to do. So I almost want to prove that to myself at the same time. And just, again, I love like bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding specifically. I love the idea of building an awesome physique that didn't require like any PEDs to do. I'm not against that or anything. I just think for me personally, it's much more aesthetic when the physique is natural, and just kind of bringing that to more people. Cause I almost feel like there are some people who haven't discovered that thing yet. And it could be really, really helpful for them. Like I've known it with, it's indirectly influenced like my social circle, the fact that I'm so heavily like into this thing. And I'd love to be able to help people and push that, and also be part of a company like you guys, Revive Stronger, that's kind of it's doing the job I wanted to do, but doing it a lot better than I was doing on my own. So just having the opportunity to join you guys, I felt like I had to play hard to get with Pascal, make him wait a few days before I said yes or no. But it was
you were like always watching the phone, like at home,
just sitting by the phone.
Yeah, exactly. No, waiting. I want to call him. And hang up again? No, I can't call him now.
But and then to have the influence on the industry that I wanted, joining you guys is just like it's going to do I think it's like the sum of all parts. What is it? The whole is greater than the sum of all the parts. And I think that's definitely the situation here. I think I've been very vague about my goals, but I want to get a lot better at training competitors as well, because it's something that I've been looking to do. And it's quite an intimidating thing to try and get into on your own, because I've not competed before. And I've been working with Steve to help me with my programming and stuff like that. And I'd love to, I feel like I know a hell of a lot about this stuff and I'm confident with it, but I'd definitely like to almost boost this awesome kind of side of the industry up, lift it up higher so more people can find out about it. And then we can take over and rule. And I don't mean that bit.
That's the overall goal of Revive Stronger, is just to rule all.
Yeah, domination. Well, let's just be one Instagram account, which is Revive Stronger. No.
The one who rules them all. No, but to me it sounds... So this is basically also the reason why we brought you on, right? So first and foremost, all what Steve has talked about, that you showed your face, you've been present over time. So you know Steve longer than we know each other. But then over time, our friendship has evolved out of the all the times that we've met each other and hang out together, right? And because of that, and also that our visions, our work ethics, and the way we see the industry right now and also in the future is just, it aligns, and we could work on so much more together than each and every single one of us alone, right? And thus I think joining forces is just kind of a no-brainer most of the time, right? When things just scream and shout like, yeah, do it together, guys, do it together, instead of trying to battle or trying to fight the battle yourself.
I'd struggled a lot as well with doing my own thing with because I felt like all my opinions completely aligned with you guys anyway. So I literally felt like when I was creating content and social media posts and stuff, I'd be like, how do I make this not sound like Revive Stronger? Because and I was saying it to a colleague yesterday at work, where I do personal training. I was saying exactly the same thing. They're like, what's it like kind of doing stuff with Revive Stronger now? I was like, if anything, it's easier because I'm not trying to filter it through. Yeah. It sound like you're copying those guys. So, yeah.
No, you're just part of it. Part of the monster.
Yeah. I also want to know, Harry, what are your, apart from kind of business ambitions, what are your personal ambitions in terms of like training? I know you've said, I know we're in like conversations about competing and things. What are your kind of, where are you going with it?
I want to compete. But first of all, I would just love to actually feel some stimulation in my lats when I train. I think that's my primary goal at the moment is like every so often I get a little like, oh, was that my lat? So but from a personal perspective, I love the golden era physiques, and I'd love to build something that is similar to that. I think Frank Zane, that famous photo of him on the beach is like everyone, if they could have had that poster on their wall without making their dads really concerned, they would have. I know I would have. But I think it's been my phone wallpaper at some points as well when I was sort of 16 or 17. But yeah, I'd love to build a really classically proportioned physique. But it's not so much the end goal, it's the pursuit of it. Like I did a post the other day talking about how like I've been having some lower back irritation and stiffness, but I don't find it concerning at all. I just find it really intriguing. And I think that highlights how invested in the process I am, almost more than the end result. But definitely would love to build an awesome physique. I'd love to build a competitive physique because I haven't competed yet, because I've spoken to Steve about this before. I've always felt like every time I've been kind of lean enough to look at the kind of muscularity I have, I'm like, nope, then there needs to be more. So I've kind of been putting off competing for probably like the last 6 years or so. But 6 years ago, I would not have had enough mass to do it.
Do you think that it is a lack of mass, or is it more like a psychological barrier?
Probably both. I think it's definitely both, especially after what Cliff said at the seminar. What was it? The Casey Butt formula, where he, to this day, of all his clients, had the worst scoring genetic profile according to that.
That was like the funniest thing of the day I found. Yeah.
But this seminar helped me so much to keep things in perspective for myself as well, because as you guys may know, I'm not posting a lot about myself on Instagram, right? When it comes to physique shots and stuff like that, because I think that I also lack muscularity while at the same time carrying too much body fat, right? So this is always like, we are our own worst critic and also enemy in that sense. And I think that you would be surprised that you're probably not the guy stepping on stage with the worst conditioning, with the least amount of muscle mass. And even then, if that's the case, it is still about the journey, as you rightly pointed out. So this seminar gave me such a new perspective on bodybuilding, because now I always see Cliff in front of me, right? And this is kind of his own words. Like, he's not made for bodybuilding, right? And he still pursued that goal of actually being a bodybuilder. And after years of dedicated work, he's now finally at a point where other people are now looking up to him even, right? And I think that for everyone, it is kind of possible to achieve at least that. And he's still not the biggest guy, right? But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It really influenced me. I think I took about 4 or 5 pages of A4 notes when I was there.
Yeah.
Almost if it didn't disrupt everyone else, so they'd been like, sorry, Cliff, can you repeat that bit? So type it down. But yeah, it's definitely influenced the way I've been thinking a lot since the seminar. It's given me a lot more self-confidence, but it's also given me just like another thing I found really interesting was just how assertive he was. When we asked, it's like, oh, when would you make adjustments and stuff like that? And he's like, straight away. As soon as things aren't like optimal in any way, it's like bang, make an adjustment. So.
It's funny because this is exactly what Steve and I took away from that as well. Like, when to make adjustments. And so it was a very, very valuable seminar for me, because it was also so different in the content provided. And we have it recorded, so it's coming out in very soon. So for everyone listening, it's the second time we are talking about that, so you better purchase that.
And I agree. I think we all aspire to Cliff in many ways. I think a lot of the audience probably aspire to him, particularly because like none of us three are obvious genetic elite who are going to go and be like pro natural bodybuilders. It's just not an obvious thing for us. If we get there, it will be part of combination of just inherent masses of hard work, and
no one else showed up on the day.
Exactly. I mean, this is just the harsh truth of it. I'd say none of us are obviously made for bodybuilding. I don't think you have to be made for it to be able to love it and pursue it like relentlessly. And the exciting thing about that is like Cliff he has a good physique, or like by all means, but it's not like absurd. And he is one of the best, if not like the top natural bodybuilding coach, if you were to name one out there. And that is, as a coach, massively inspiring, and like as a competitor. So I think it gives all of us at least that kind of drive and hope as well. And like, you can make it in that way.
Yeah.
And especially also because he has been working so long to actually get where he is right now. It is not someone who is saying like, my genetics are shit, and after 3 years, 4 years, they look amazing. Right? For him, it's true that, and he has been so analytical in his approach to actually get where he is right now. He needed to turn kind of every single stone to actually get there, and because of that time length, and because of his analytical approach and his genetic profile, it is kind of very encouraging then, right? Because if he can do it, it's also his words. If I can do it, you can do it. Right, and it was kind of motivational, and I'm not often motivated by things like these, but it definitely was this time around.
It was like a Tony Robbins presentation.
Yeah, come on now.
And I hope
let's get shredded.
We do the same for people that end up working with us, and people will do the same when they come to work with Harry, when they work with all of us. They're kind of like, okay, actually, you've shown you've been able to achieve this in many ways. And that obviously attracts people, because I mean, you want to work with someone who aligns with your beliefs and your thoughts, but also who you can kind of recognize as something I think in a way you probably want to aspire a little bit to your coach in some ways. So I think that is part of at least our attraction as well. And it's actually interesting how much we align in that way with Cliff as well. If I think he'd be okay with us saying that. Yeah,
this podcast is just like a series of slapping his back. But, I think it's a responsibility of the coach to kind of inspire and motivate with the client to do anything really. Because having worked with, again, I don't really like the phrase Gen Pop, but having worked with Gen Pop people, they require a hell of a lot more inspiration and a hell of a lot more motivation than a lot of the guys like us, like who are already obsessed with, like, we'd be in the gym like 24/7 if someone hadn't told us we don't need to do that, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, I do think that's a prerequisite of a good coach is having that ability to do that in your clients.
For you and yourself and your own training, do you need any kind of motivation to still train hard or keep going then?
No, but I have enlisted one of my clients every now and then. I'll shout him out, James. Whenever I have metabolite sessions, I know that I think everyone's guilty of it. I talk myself into failure, but it wasn't quite failure. So we kind of hook up on those sessions, and he basically just watches me while I do leg extensions.
Nice.
Pretty much, because you don't do that. That sounds really creepy, doesn't it? He just like while I'm doing leg extensions, but you just know, having that other person there that you trust, who understands like reps and reserve and that kind of thing, to make sure that you don't shortchange yourself. But other than that, I'd say like I am. Yeah, it's not a matter of motivation. It's like I just can't imagine not doing it. Like there's always days when we wake up and we're like, oh, I don't like this session. I think we spoke about it after the seminar, actually. I mentioned like working with clients and stuff, how a lot of the, like, say, typical person who's like semi into the gym, like sorry if I offend anyone, but like the typical fuckboy, like just trains upper body, doesn't really train legs. It's like that's the perfect example of someone who only does the stuff they like and they just don't do the stuff they don't like. And I think the difference there is that we would do the things that we don't like, even though we don't like it. And it is not a case of motivation. It's like we could be severely unmotivated to do a session, but it still gets done at the intensity it needs to get done at. I don't really think about it. Clients ask a lot as well. So how do you motivate yourself to do it? I'm like, I don't.
I try and mold my wants to be I try and make my wants my needs. So like I know I need to do something. So I try and say, I want to do that. And that's why I try and get clients to mold towards. You can't always get them there, but at least having that frame of thinking like, this is what I need to do. So I also want to do it because the thing I need to do will get me to my goal best. And that's overall what I want as well. So let's do that thing.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm always finding myself every once in a while in a spot where I'm getting comfortable, right, with the training and stuff, where it's like Harry just brought up in regards to the ARIA and training to failure, where then like, oh yeah, this was all I was able to do here for today. And if you then sit down and be really honest with yourself, you could have probably done a little bit more, right? Also then in this set range, for example, where you've worked at. Basically, at a certain level of strength, everything will just feel hard and will be challenging, even if you're only doing like 2 sets. But probably you could have done a little bit more and still recover from that just fine in the entirety of a mesocycle, right?
That's the exact relationship I have with the leg press. It seems to not matter how much load is on it, you always have one more. As long as you have that checklist, like you keep your technique good and you come the deepest you can do with still keeping a neutral spine. Just like I hate the leg press so much, but I love it so much at the same time.
Yeah,
because I feel like whether it's like 180 kilos on it or like 280 kilos on it, it's still just as hard.
Yeah,
and yeah, that's why it's the whole reps and reserve thing. I think that's probably one exercise where every set is always 0.5 reps in reserve. No infinity next to it.
Totally. It's funny because at one point, Steve and I talked about something, and that is with the people who are always then preaching that going to failure or training to failure is the way to go. And they always say like, okay, people don't know how to train to failure. Right, and that's why you're training to failure. So you are saying basically in the same breath that you don't know how to train to failure, and that's why you train to failure. Doesn't make sense.
Paradox, isn't it? Yeah.
Or it makes sense. So that they are just admitting that they don't know how to train to failure, and that's why they always push to failure, so that they spin their wheels. Don't know. It's very confusing.
Failure has different conditions though. Because I work with people in person, so I understand being with a client that I'm kind of working with, I can make them hit like a kind of minor failure condition, or I can get them to hit a major failure condition, in the sense that if they reach what I consider to be like an acceptable difficulty of set, then you can let them have that as failure almost, because you know that if I'd changed gears and gone into like drill sergeant PT mode, I could have got 3 or 4 more. And I feel like most people in their own training never go into that sort of the no man's land of those final 3 or 4 reps.
The question is then always also, how do you want to recover from that type of training? Because going to like all out concentric failure, it's just like you will probably not be able to train that muscle group again for the next couple of days, right? If you're pushing it beyond that limit, right? But I just find it funny when people are saying like, people don't know how to train to failure and they are the ones training to failure, because that is just like admitting that they don't know how to train to failure. So it doesn't really make sense to me. It's a poor argument to be honest. And that doesn't mean that I'm questioning that people don't know how to train to failure, because there's probably something to that. But I think that the people who are kind of like us, and also the people who are following us, they don't have that problem most of the time.
If you really aren't sure if you're hitting failure or 0 reps in reserve, then just do leg presses with Dr. Mike and Jared Feather watching you. That I had DOMs for like 11
But the
days.
thing is, right, in that kind of sense, I think that you are going beyond what you're capable of. We all know that when someone is watching and we want, I don't know, kind of don't embarrass ourselves or impress them, we are most of the time more capable of doing more in that kind of sense or in that set.
Yeah.
This wouldn't apply to all the giving workouts. You wouldn't train that way all the single time. Once again, you never know how much of a recovery demand that session then generates.
11
right?
days.
For example, then, right? And thus, I don't think that also those studies where then people are performing an exercise all out concentric failure once again in front of a team of researchers, I think that they can probably, sorry for that, do more in that setting than when they train by themselves.
It depends on the researchers as well, because if the researchers are people like, Eric Trexler or someone like that, who's engaged in bodybuilding themselves, they kind of know what failure would look like. Whereas if it's researchers who are very much just sort of standing there in white coats watching, it could almost have, a social inhibition effect where like the person almost is uncomfortable with all the eyes on them, and then they end up just racking a set. Because if you do work with like normal people, that you'll find that if you say take the set to failure, they'll just be going along and then just kind of stop and like put the kind of the leg press like thingy back into place, and then they're just like, why did you stop? They're like, oh, I hit failure. And you're like, there's no way you just hit failure with that.
Yeah, it's the same when it comes to something like, I do remember those times where I was required to do something that I wasn't skilled at, right? In front of other people. I was just like, I didn't feel comfortable in that, and I just wanted to be out of that situation as quickly as possible. Something like that, right? Where it's just like, I was done. I was done with that situation. Like,
yeah. Agreed.
I wish I had more to add, but I don't have a lot to add. I was only going to say it is all really interesting, but I think the thing I've at least taken away recently in the last year, thinking about it more, is like, actually, it sounds a bit bro-ish actually to say it, but listening to your body a little bit more, in that like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 reps in reserve, they're all 1 rep away from each other. So it's not a big difference. So how you feel at like a 3 versus like a 1 shouldn't be like night and day. They should both be pretty damn hard. Obviously 1 is harder and 0 is even harder than that. But it's not like it's like hugely exponential. It is exponential, but only like slightly. And in yourself if you've taken a set hard enough to cause an sort of overload. You just know it got hard. If you never train to a point at which it actually feels really hard within that muscle group, you just know you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. I think there is value in everyone doing one of those ridiculously huge bro sessions where you you hit failure and have someone shouting at you and stuff, because then it does help to, what I know it did with my own training is it shunted my own perceptions of intensity up a few notches, where I realized that I was training where I felt was sort of 0 to 3 or 4 reps in reserve. But in reality, after having had that experience, that was probably like 7 or 8 reps in reserve. So then I kind of shunted my perceptions and expectations across. So now I know, like for me personally, a 3 rep in reserve set is really, 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 really hard. But it's hard enough to the point where I stop it just short of that. When you get that voice in your head, that's like one more rep. That's kind of when I stop that set. Whereas if it was an overreaching week and I'm on 0 reps in reserve, I would listen to that voice and just keep going.
And I think that most of the time you are in the green zone then. This is basically what also Eric Hams is then talking about. Like when you are 1 to 0 reps in reserve, you're probably good, right? Everything there is probably good, right?
Everything feels hard there.
Yeah. So going to failure has its potential risks and also consequences. That's also why you don't want to do it in the first week of the mesocycle. And going to something like 4 ARIA is probably not always a good idea for certain lifts and certain exercises. It is, especially in week number 1. But everything beyond that, you don't want to push it there too frequently, right? And then you are most of the time in the 1 to 3 ARIA zone. And I don't think that it will yield that much of a difference in regards to hypertrophy. At least from the scientific literature, we don't see it. But when it comes to RER training, I'm always a little bit like, we can't really interpret too much into the scientific literature there because of the population it's being tested on. And also, failure is always a little bit different for each and every individual and how long you've been training for, all these kind of things, right? But for people like us, for example, I think that once you are in the 1 to 3 rep range, most of the time, you're golden.
Yeah. I think of it like, have you ever played the Need for Speed video game or any racing video game where you have NOS?
But it's a very long time ago.
Yeah.
I just recently saw a video with all the Need for Speed videos, like a mashup, right?
Yeah.
From going from the oldest to the newest. And there have been like one of the oldest ones I was playing back in the days.
Yeah.
So
I almost think of like zero reps in reserve as like NOS mode. Like I don't, and I feel like that's a finite resource as well. So if you use the NOS on say week 2, then it won't replenish in time. And then you find that your performance just goes like, and that you don't even have it literally feels like there is a fuel in my brain, which is no longer there. Like you've probably had it before where you say you misload something. We've all done that before where you jump on the leg press and you do a set and you're like, that was really hard. And then you realize because you're putting so many plates on, you've put on like an extra set of plates without realizing it or something like that. And then you feel like you just burnt off half your NOS and you're like, I
just had it on the incline press here 2 days ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
Where I was loading it. It was a little bit too heavy because I was kidding myself. And then first set was fine. Second set was already kind of a battle. And then the third set was not even in the repetition range anymore. And I could have probably gotten there if I was a little bit more conservative with the first set.
Yeah.
Sweet. Do we have time for questions, Pascal?
We do, but I mean, it's 12 minutes to go. How many?
There was any specific to
I said to the guys, I would pick the easiest question.
Do you want to pick the Patreon supporter then, Harry?
Oh, that wasn't the easy one.
I don't know if it's easy, but it's a Patreon supporter. They need to.
You, Steve, I think.
It was. I was asking me.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So.
What's a nice way to support your Patreon supporters? Oh.
Yeah, don't know. It's a longer one, so I don't want to read it through now and keep the audience in silence. So let's just I would just pick one, all right? So
we can use these questions next week. I'll be fine.
Or something like that. Yeah, let's do that.
But was there any specific for Harry this week?
I have no idea.
There was one from Greg Stone.
Let's use Greg's.
He asked, so the question was, regarding my recent Instagram post about tracking macros versus tracking habits, can we please discuss some of the most important habits we consistently see in clients that help them achieve their goals? So this one is not too in depth. It's kind of like listing habits. So I guess
go for it, Harry.
Yeah,
I'll start.
It's your
top one I'd say is kind of just adopting a critical thinking mindset. So forget about black and white thinking and think more along a spectrum. So everything has value. You shouldn't just throw anything away. But regarding actual lifestyle habits, we can make it really simple. It's just you want to be making sure that you're having a high quality protein source. For most people of most body weight ranges, you want at least 40 grams of protein per feeding, at least 4 feedings a day. That will maximize muscle protein synthesis. And then plants of every meal is what I would say, or at least with 3 out of those 4 meals, you want to have plants. That would be fruit or veggies. And what else? Success. I'd say the main success, the habit or more of a trait I see in successful clients is is, like I said at the start, is that critical thinking thing. It's the kind of client where they think for themselves. I think that's a really important thing. And that sounds a bit vague, but the ones where you can trust to throw them at like an all-inclusive buffet and they're going to come out the other side okay. So I don't know how to put that into words. Maybe one of you can rescue me.
I think once you having an education, like you said, like that critical thinking, once you're educated behind food and kind of what it means, you can kind of tackle anything and you don't necessarily need to be tracking. Because sometimes I find I've had it with Gen Pop clients where I start them on tracking and they just fall on their face. They like can't hit the numbers very well. They're just finding it all like, and it's all over the place and they want to track. And I'm like, I don't think you should bother tracking yet. Yeah. Let's just focus on eating, like you said, protein heavy meals, lean protein sources, veggies with every meal. And if you do that, you're going to be in a pretty hefty deficit and we're going to be in a really good position. And if they do that, like if they're away for the weekend and it's complicated to try and track whatever it might be, they'll be in a better position than having to be restrained by having to try and track. But without that education, they're just like, they're lost and they're not able to do those things. So I think that habit and I guess that background of education then builds a load of successful habits. Just like, I don't know, you might have someone who is in a mass phase, they're away on the weekend and they're like, oh, I can't eat this or this to get my calories in. It has to be like clean foods or whatever it might be. And they're struggling to get their protein intake or they're struggling to get their calorie intake. And then someone else who understands, okay, if you have one day of like a load of crappy food, for lack of a better term, then they can still achieve their goals and in following days pick up on those micronutrient deficiencies and be okay and not stress about that. It's without that educational background, I think people struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in one episode we talked about like intuitive eating and everything that, so most of the things I was talking about when it comes to tracking the macros, that people seem to have an issue with that. So it seems like that there's the camp between the intuitive eaters and the mindful eating approach versus tracking macros. And I think that both are very valuable skills to have, but it isn't that one is superior over the other. And also that elitism that comes across like that with some of those intuitive eaters who kind of made it, right? Like, I'm intuitively eating and you can do it as well. And if you don't, you're a bad person. This is always something I was having a big issue with, right? Because they are not mutually exclusive, and the same goes for these kind of things. They go hand in hand with another, in my opinion at least. Tracking macros should build you an awareness of your environment and also should build some good habits. It's not there to actually build some bad relationship with food and thus some bad habits. It happens. I've been there myself where I was becoming a little bit overly neurotic about my macros, but it actually should lead down the road of good habit building and vice versa, right? That once a habit is in check, actually you could be more relaxed with the tracking, and they both feed from another, in my opinion. That's why I would always encourage to try to work on both at the same time, so that when the time comes where you need to make use of more of your habits, right? Because you can't rely on tracking, then you can make use of that awareness that you've built and those habits that you've built along the way. And if you don't, why run any kind of chances, right? Go back to tracking those macros, because when you're used to that, it's not really a hassle or big of a deal.
You want to get people to the point where tracking macros feels arbitrary. They feel like with or without MyFitnessPal, their lifestyle is exactly the same.
Absolutely.
That's
totally.
The point I was trying to make in the post. But like Steve said, you do get people fall flat on their face. I know I've been guilty of this in the past. When I first discovered kind of if it fits your macros, I was like, to every client, I was like, if it fits your macros, like just throwing it at them. And then those people that don't have that that kind of education in just the habits required, you find that they do, like Steve said, just fall flat on their face. It's like all they have to navigate fitness is a torch, and they're in a pitch black maze. It's like, and the batteries start running out eventually. Yeah. So it's just if you have like even simple things, like I know that no matter what, I'm going to have porridge and a protein shake for breakfast and blueberries. And it's like, whether I'm massing or gaining, massing or cutting, it's going to be pretty much going to be that way anyway. The only thing that's going to change is the quantities.
No, absolutely. And the thing is that this then gives you a little bit more flexibility because you don't have to plug that into MyFitnessPal each and every single day because you kind of know what it is, right? Or you have a, I don't know, saved a template of your meal, just hit one button and that it is in your MyFitnessPal. So,
and you don't want to be where you're in a supermarket because you know you don't have any kind of dinner sorted and you're just wandering around scanning random things on MyFitnessPal. You can't decide what you want, because if you have that structure in your head, if you know every meal that you're having is going to have 2 plants in it and it's going to have a high quality protein source, and whether you're cutting or massing it, the amount of starch will vary. It makes life so much easier because you just go straight to the veggies, you just grab something green and then I grab something else, and then you go straight to the meat section and you're just like looking at the lean meat. It just makes that there's no thought involved anymore because you just know what's going on. And that's the point I was trying to make. Just make it automatic.
Yeah, I think the macro Tetris, I always call it, becomes when you're cutting, if you try and play macro Tetris, it's just hellish. Whereas when you're gaining, like I'm on over 4,000 calories at the moment, so I can go into a supermarket and buy pretty much anything and it's fine. Whereas when you're cutting, if you don't have a plan or an idea of what you're going in to get, you could be in there for hours. I've done it before. I've been in there for far too long, and like Charlotte's outside, like, what the fuck? He's been in there for like an hour.
So that was always the case when I was over in the UK and I was cutting and I needed to figure out my dinner for tonight. It was just like, I have no idea what to buy here. This is a different country. So I was just wandering around, and thus I wasn't even aware of what I want to eat, right? That is a big problem in it for itself as well. It was just like, okay, what do I want to eat? What about this? Doesn't fit my macros.
Yeah,
so
6 grams of fat.
Yeah,
we've been there.
Yeah.
A habit I've also found that's been helpful for me, and that I advise a lot of clients that end up falling short of protein, which sometimes happen, is just like packing protein bars. I know it's just I just thought I'd add that as just a random habit, because when I do that, it helps, especially when I'm dieting. It particularly helps because when I'm gaining again, I can find something it's easy. Whereas when you're dieting, sometimes the food that wherever you're going, I don't know where it could be, like someone's dinner or something, and you just need the protein. Fats. Yeah. So taking protein bars with you is helpful in those situations.
I found protein bars to align more with super highly palatable foods than they do with a useful bodybuilding tool for me. Where when I don't have them on a cut, I find the cut so much easier.
Me too.
I wouldn't put them in as a regular. That's a good. I'm not saying that. Take them as like or maybe like beef jerky might be a better suggestion, but I don't know. It's not as accessible.
And the funny thing is, now in the off season, I don't even like them.
Yeah,
I have one. It's just like, holy shit, for this amount of calories, I could have easily gone with a normal Snickers bar, and it's so much tastier, right? Still not eating that, but it's just like figuring that out for yourself, right? Makes probably things also so much easier for the next cutting phase, because I had a time in the cutting phase, Steve knows that, I was binging on protein bars, right? Because they were so palatable in that cutting state. And believe me, you don't want to binge on those low carb protein bars. You don't.
Are we due? Are we time? Is time done?
Yeah. It's close to an hour.
Awesome.
So we can though plug Harry a little bit. Harry's coaching service, which is also our coaching service. But of course, because Harry joined our team, he still has some spots left open. So if you're now interested in working together with Thor, becoming part of the Avengers, which we are, then apply over on our website, and maybe you're eligible to actually join the team when you got a superpower.
You have to lift the hammer. If you can't lift me on,
exactly. Yeah.
To be worthy.
Yeah.
I think that's all we've got. So I want to say a massive thank you for Harry for joining us this week. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you want to get Thor back on the show, comment below. We want to see that. See the love for Harry.
Back equally, then please let us know.
Yeah, comment below if you don't want Harry back. And we'll catch you next week.
Cheers, guys.